Attorney General James Uthmeier here. Florida's been leading on immigration enforcement, supporting the Trump administration and ICE's efforts to detain and deport criminal aliens. The governor tasked state leaders to identify places for new temporary detention facilities. I think this is the best one.
Florida's Attorney General says that construction has begun on a new controversial migrant detention facility in the Everglades. He calls it Alligator Alcatraz.
People get out, there's not much waiting for them other than alligators and pythons. Nowhere to go, nowhere to hide.
Monday night, deep in the Everglades, about an hour-and-a-half drive from Miami, 2 patrol cars guard the Dade Collier Training and Transition Airport.
The home of the failed Everglades jetport project from the 70s.
Right now, the area is used as a pilot training facility.
39 square miles, including an existing big plane runway along US 41 on the Miami-Dade Collier line.
But Miami-Dade County owns the land, and the mayor says that she still needs answers.
There are concerns about the environmental impacts and the property's appraisal. The state offering $20 million, but the county says the most recent numbers put the total value of the site at least $190 million.
This presents a great opportunity for the state of Florida to work with Miami-Dade and Collier counties. Alligator Alcatraz, we're ready to go.
With a planned opening day sometime around the first week of July.
Still, many are slamming the idea, citing environmental concerns.
Attorney General James Uthmeier here.
Oh, shit. What should we do? I heard that. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2. Alligator Alcatraz. It was last week, it was merely a rumor. This week, the governor, Ron DeSantis, has seized the property. 39 square miles of it, owned by Dade County, and has just started building this makeshift, I don't know, out of like toothpicks and popsicle sticks or whatever. They're building a prison with at least 5,000 beds. Joining us later in this episode is Harvard professor Alejandro de la Fuente, who wrote an op-ed last week basically saying, am I back in Cuba? And so it all seems thematically related, Tomas. We are joined by Tomas Kennedy, who this week, the Miami New Times in their Best of Miami issue declared Miami's best community organizer, Magatov. There you go. We are crowning him.
Just one more king.
We are crowning. That's it. Well, just one more king. Not no more king, uno más.
Actually,
just one more king.
2 more kings, because you, my friend, also got best stuff.
I did. I got a Best of Miami. I'm scrolling down in the New Times, and I saw Tomas Kennedy's name, Best of Miami, and I saw Best Play, Lincoln Road Hustle from Miami New Drama that we did late last year, earlier this year. So Best of Miami, and we are in very good company, because as I continued scrolling down and the Best of Miami New Times, I saw Best Local Boy Gone Bad, Enrique Tarrio, Miami's own Clayton Bigsby, your boy.
Mm-hmm. Well, my friend said only in America would an Afro-Cuban be able to lead a roving gang of white supremacists.
Because of
America.
Because Miami.
Because America. Speaking of which, speaking of because America, speaking of what's left of the 5th and now 8th Amendments. So I want to start here on Alligator Alcatraz. So setting aside for a moment that they offered $20 million, the land is worth $190 million, and then didn't even bother to negotiate. Our completely useless mayor, county mayor, Danielle Levine Cava, who could not be, she is the worst mayor for this moment in history for Miami. Just absolutely the worst. I've been calling this shit out for 5 years. And what's funny is now all of a sudden all the people that have been fighting me on it for years feel like they're coming around to that fact.
Well, look, the county here is getting screwed over in so many different ways. One is the environmental concern about this facility, this concentration camp in the middle of the desert, right? I mean,
the Everglades. Yeah, I mean, it's in the middle of a national park.
Look, the Friends of the Everglades, right? The nonprofit conservationist group was founded by Marjorie Stoneman Douglas and other folks in opposition of this site being developed into a very, very large commercial airport, right?
This was going to be the world's largest airport.
Airport
And yeah,
Everglades.
they created this nonprofit, the legendary environmentalist Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, basically to stop this from. And they did. They succeeded in the early 70s.
Well, there is some construction there, basically an airstrip. But yeah, the project was mostly abandoned, and now it serves as a training flight runway, right? By Big Cypress. But the environmentalists were successful with that, and there's always sort of been this question about what to do with that site, right? Like, there's been efforts to turn it into a military base, a hurricane relief,
preparedness, like
management,
kind of area, yeah.
storage place. There's been talk about ceding it fully to the national park protection. Right. So
possibly even selling it to the Miccosukee, whose reservation is adjacent to it.
Correct. But that question has been called because the governor is using an emergency proclamation from 2023 related to immigration because of the supposed Biden border crisis, whatever. He's using that proclamation from 2023
that he's actually renewed arbitrarily like a dozen times. Correct. I think between it, right? So
like a true fascist does, because that's what they do. They
declares a fake emergency.
They govern through fake emergency proclamations, giving them supreme authority, and they continue to renew them over and over again. I mean, that's what these authoritarians do. So he used this emergency proclamation to take over the land arbitrarily. The property really is priceless, but it is appraised for $195 million. They offered a possible $20 million of FEMA money, by the way, during hurricane relief. There's hurricane season. They want to use FEMA
It's hurricane
emergency
season
money
right now. By the way, they say it's going to cost upwards of $425 million a year just to operate this shithole. Yes. And they've already dedicated a very small amount of that to year one, but it's from FEMA. It's from hurricane relief money during hurricane season.
Relief money. And let's not forget that we just had a legislative session that was extended well over a month from when it was supposed to end because lawmakers couldn't get it together on the budget, because we are facing a $2.8 billion budget deficit with a B as soon as next year.
And now they're going to spend $425 million a year on this Gator Gulag.
No, I'm about to spend $500 million on Gator Gulag, on Guantanamo.
Now, you did a beautiful job of doing the backstory on this and the exposition and avoiding my question.
No, I'm getting to it. I'm getting to it.
Which was Daniela Levine Cava.
No, I'm getting to it.
The mayor of Miami-Dade County, who is the CEO of a $13 billion a year corporation with 40,000 employees and seems completely useless right now. She was at the ribbon cutting of a new terminal, like the extension of a terminal at Miami International Airport,
make Miami Airport great again,
dude. Which is
great at all.
Not what we need at the airport. We don't need more terminals. We need working escalators and a working SkyTrain and working moving walkways and working toilets. But they're like, oh no, we're gonna have 6 new. Like, no, stop! Don't grow it. Just fix what's there.
Gotta master the basics.
Yeah, it's like, I have a question. Are they
gotta walk before you can run?
I have a question. Are they just gonna have broken bathrooms? Like, we're building new broken bathrooms. Like, we're going to build new escalators that don't work. Like, what? This is what she's doing while there's, and I wish we could take callers on this show again, because that was fun. Roy really misses that. I know you miss that, Roy.
No,
and so
I tell the truth all the time.
And so
the lie detector test determined that was a lie.
So because you called it a concentration camp, and I don't really know.
I mean, academically, that's what it is.
I don't know how else to explain it. I mean,
I'm not saying it's an extermination camp, but it's a concentration camp.
No, best case scenario, it's the Japanese in World War II. Worst case scenario, it's the Jews in World War II. And I would love the phone lines to light up on that, because let's talk about this for a second. Now I'm ducking the question about the, but here's the thing.
I'll answer.
Here's the thing. Summer in the Everglades. I made a documentary called Square Grouper, The Godfathers of Ganja. One of the stories was about the pothaulers out in Everglades City, where we shot that, I think it was the summer of 2010. I was walking around looking at all these redneck fishermen, and it's 120 20 degrees outside, and they've got like turtlenecks, long sleeves, like they're all bundled up. And I'm like, dude, it's too hot for that.
The skeeters.
And then I realized, I woke up one morning, Roy, the back of my neck looked like the Elephant Man. I was deformed because I got eaten. So some of these skeeters are like the size of my head. I've never seen, it's like Jurassic Park out there. Forget the gators and the pythons. There is skeeters, there is disease, there is heat. People are going to die.
People are already
dead. The people who work there are going to die.
3 people died in Chrome. I mean,
Right.
a person died at BTC, which is the detention center in Pompano Beach, managed by GEO, is a for-profit one. But look, I mean, we have precedent, right? I mean, Joe Arpaio, infamous sheriff from Arizona, Maricopa County, indicted, had a
pardoned.
Also had a tent city for I think 24 years in Arizona, where they basically imprisoned undocumented people, and it faced numerous lawsuits from former people in detention that were abused, mistreated. There were multiple like UN and Amnesty International reports detailing the overcrowdedness, the dangerous conditions, the overheating of individuals, the lack of hygienic product, medicine, illness, etc. So we've seen that, and that's in Arizona, right, with awful desert heat. This is in the Everglades. It's in the
hurricane season.
In hurricane season. And this place does not have adequate infrastructure, adequate running water. Uthmeyer, the attorney general, was quoted saying in the Herald. Uthmeyer.
He's from España.
Uthmeyer. He was quoted saying that they don't need to build brick and mortar; they'll just do tents.
Oh,
it's designed. And let me answer the Daniela question.
Okay. Well, okay.
So
please,
the reason I want to paint a picture of how, if I may curse, fucked up this facility is.
Thanks.
How much? Sorry. How
Roy!
much?
We're going to censor it with that. We're going to take wherever you say the F word, you're just going to go. Let me just tell you how
Roy!
up this is.
People will get it.
Yeah.
But the county's being screwed over in so many ways, right? They have, I think, standing in multiple ways to sue. And really, the only thing that can stop this is a lawsuit by the county.
Sure. Well, I think they're going to ignore it, but whatever.
Right.
I mean, the state is going to ignore it.
Right. But I mean, we need it. And the county and commissioners are not stepping up. In fact,
they're not doing anything. It's our land. It's our property.
Daniela was quoted in the Herald saying, I understand the need for a detention center, and I'm not opposed to that. Literally, like she said that. But I just have some environmental concerns. That's, I'm sorry, not good enough. It's not strong enough. Like, this is severe. It's serious.
She's useless. Her political career is over. She's not running for governor. She'll probably try to run for Congress, but I don't think that's a real thing. If you're going to die on a hill or take a stand, do it for the Everglades. She accurately pointed out that the federal and state government has spent billions of dollars trying to preserve the Everglades, and now we're going to shit all over it. And I want to...
Correct. And you also have the example of the crap storm. I will censor myself. Crap
Roy!
Storm. Can we say crap?
Roy storm.
Crap is
it's the Roy storm.
The Roy storm that DeSantis caught when he was trying to develop those stupid pickleball courts in the state parks.
Oh, and yeah, and he wanted to slash and burn state parks to build golf courses. People
generally don't like,
I think it's called
building
Padel?
crap in our state and national parks. That's not supposed to be there.
Padel. Like Kale. You eat Kale salad?
Sure. Roy!
So here's the thing. I mentioned the Eighth Amendment. The Eighth Amendment for our constitutional scholars at home is cruel and unusual punishment. It is without a doubt to even the people who are going to be working at this facility. To me, that's a violation of their Eighth Amendment rights. There should be no state or federal workers who work in that kind of environment in the Everglades in summer during hurricane season. But these
and for what?
Prisoners,
you know what I mean?
For what? To violate their Fifth Amendment rights of due process, because we already know, and I'm tired of hearing about this. That if you ain't in illegal, I don't know. That's not how Miamians sound when they're making that argument. But if you're not an illegal, you have nothing to worry about. That is horseshit, or as we call it,
Roy!
Shit. Oh, wait, did I censor the right? That is horse.
Roy.
So
hey, man.
If you look Hispanic, if you are brown or black, if you have a last name that ends in Z, and I don't mean Schwartz, you are going to get detained. You might even get arrested while they figure out if you got a blue passport or you have a smart ID that they think is fake. And you got guys out there who are now not really federal officers, but are ostensibly Proud Boys or bounty hunters that are just trying to make a quota, just trying to get 31 bodies a day or 3,000 bodies a day, and they don't give a fuck if they are detaining. They don't give a if they are arresting or detaining American citizens. When I say American citizens, I mean people born in this country who might be Hispanic. They're going to drag them out to a fucking concentration camp in the fucking Everglades.
Three examples.
Sorry, this concentration camp humor.
We literally had to intervene to help secure the release of a U.S.-born citizen that just couldn't speak English and looked Hispanic, who was detained by Florida Highway Patrol and put in an ICE hold in Neal County Jail.
What was he do? What did he get? Was it a speeding? He was pulled over for what?
He wasn't even driving. He was. You know that lawsuit that we have against Uthmeier for this. Uthmeier for this state law that makes it entry into the state as an undocumented person illegal. That law is blocked because of our lawsuit. They charged them under that law that they weren't supposed to be charging people under. A U.S. citizen. And then put him on an ICE hold for 28 hours, and we had to help secure his release. And it was because they racially profiled him.
By the way, and this is the kind of guy who could be they'll put him right in the fucking Everglades.
I also want to make the point, going back to the mayor, CVP, Border Patrol, and the Coast Guard boarded a boat that she was on with Telemundo VIPs, like leadership of Telemundo
and
Network,
and
FIFA executives. Like VIPs.
They're a bunch of illegals, though, aren't they?
They boarded the boat. I heard about it. I was the first one to report it. They were trying to deny it. The mayor was silent on it for like over 24 hours until she finally wrote an op-ed on it.
Telemundo still hasn't talked about it. They have footage of it, and they still haven't released it.
Of course, because everybody wants to, keep things quiet because of FIFA. They don't want to scare FIFA off. But like, my point is, if they will do that to a boat of some of the most powerful people in this county, and really, I mean, FIFA VIPs are very powerful people. Imagine what they'll do to you.
Wait a second. But she's the mayor of FIFA, isn't she now? That's what Daniela is. She's like
feels like it, honestly.
Yeah, she's like a less effeminate Francis Suarez at this point. And hey,
we can say that now.
So yeah, I mean, she's a ribbon cutter. But like this is a serious county with serious problems, and she is not a serious person, Daniela Levine Cava. And I want to talk about that lawsuit that you just mentioned. I also want to talk about just blocks away from here is the immigration court where they are dismissing cases and they are then taking people into custody because they no longer have cases. But we'll have to talk about that another time because I want to talk about Uthmeier. And the reason is this kind of performative cruelty. This kind of performative cruelty, it's just like what the president does. It is a distraction from the crimes that they are committing to enrich themselves. That's the thing about this whole era, is that for all of the Christian nationalism, for all of the
Nazis are his base.
For all of the pain and the suffering and the shredding of the Constitution, it's all just a heist movie. That's what this is. Because let's talk about Uthmeier for a second. This guy is under siege. He is like scandal plagued right now.
A criminal investigation is now underway into the Hope Florida Foundation.
The program created by First Lady Casey DeSantis has been connected to a $10 million donation that was supposed to go to taxpayers.
We now know state prosecutors in Tallahassee are looking into
whether $10 million in public money was secretly transferred to the foundation that funds the private Hope Florida charity started by Casey DeSantis. The shell game of public money diverted to the DeSantis political endeavors. Then Chief of Staff and now Florida Attorney General James Uthmeier shepherded the whole process, with the money eventually landing in his political action committee.
We have information that tends to show that our Attorney General committed money laundering and wire fraud.
A federal judge finds Florida Attorney General James Uthmeier in civil contempt.
The judge accuses the Attorney General of defying an order to pause enforcement of a new state immigration law. The judge says the Attorney General violated a directive to notify police agencies to halt enforcement.
So Uthmeier is under criminal investigation in Leon County up in Tallahassee for alleged money laundering and wire fraud, an accusation, incidentally, from fellow Republicans, not from Democrats. And, of course, he, like you said, had mentioned, like, oh, maybe federal courts will intervene with Alligator Alcatraz. But the truth of the matter is this guy has already been held in civil contempt of court by a federal judge in the case
held. Is being held.
Right. So, like, this is just lawlessness at this point.
Yeah, and, it's a heist movie, but it's also about political ambition, right? Because this is a guy that's going to face a contested Republican primary, possibly from Matt Gaetz. And, obviously the governor wants to run for president again.
Sure.
He wants to, put his wife in the governor's mansion in Tallahassee. That's looking like dim prospects because of this corruption and grift. But, it's just this constant need to compete in the attention economy, right? To remain relevant, to generate division, polarization, controversy, red meat to the base. So that's what causes, Uthmeier to go on Benny Johnson's show and, talk like a moron about snakes and alligators and Alligator Alcatraz.
Performative cruelty.
With like the shitty rock music that we heard in the beginning. It's just so pathetic. And it's just, we have clout chasing influencers as politicians in this country for the most part.
It's people who don't want to do the job because the job's hard. It's just people who want a title and want to be able to go on
Benny Johnson's podcast.
Yeah. And I think we need to mention that Uthmeier is the unelected Attorney General of the state of Florida, because when Ashley Moody became a senator after Marco Rubio's his whole sort of dominoes, Marco Rubio becomes the Secretary of State. Ashley Moody fills his Senate position, and then Uthmeier, instead of being elected as that position is in the state of Florida, he gets appointed, and so you have this unelected, scandal-plagued yutz that is building a concentration camp in the Everglades.
President Trump is once again escalating his fight with Harvard, the nation's oldest, wealthiest, and most esteemed university. Not to mention the alma mater of 8 American presidents.
The administration moving to cut all federal ties with the prestigious school,
which he has maligned as a threat to democracy.
The government is today asking federal agencies to identify whether contracts with Harvard could be canceled or redirected elsewhere. The cancellations could add up to as much as $100 million in funds. The latest escalation of President Trump's battle with the university comes after Trump threatened Monday to take away $3 billion in grant money for medical and scientific research from Harvard.
This is an all-out effort to make Harvard an example. The Department of Education has suggested that their tax-exempt status is going to be reviewed.
The Trump administration says today it will now block Harvard University from enrolling international students.
In a letter, the government also says in part that all international students must, quote, transfer from Harvard to maintain their non-immigrant status.
Harvard has sued the government to block the order. The university's president describing the Trump administration's actions as retaliation for, quote, our refusal to surrender our academic independence.
An internal cable sent by Secretary Marco Rubio is ordering all consulates and embassies to immediately freeze any future interviews with potential foreign students that are seeking visas to study here inside of the United States, not just for Harvard, but for any college and university.
This is, of course, a fight for Harvard, but really it's a fight about higher education in the United States.
The Florida of today is the America of tomorrow, as we've experienced this 25-year experiment in the destruction or hijacking of public education here in the state of Florida. Now we are seeing it at a national or federal level. I should bring you up to date on the litigation. A judge just, I think this past week, has indefinitely blocked the Trump administration's effort to stop foreign students from attending Harvard, which is probably a good thing because that's like 27% of the student body at the university and constitutes, I think, upwards of $400 million economic impact in the Massachusetts area. Because obviously you have all these people traveling here and spending money here and living here. here. Joining us now is Alejandro de la Fuente. He is a professor of history and African American studies. He is the director of the Afro-Latin American Research Institute at Harvard. He wrote an op-ed published in the Miami Herald and nationally last week. The headline reads, "A Harvard professor asks, am I back in Cuba?" Professor, thanks for being here. I know you fled the authoritarian dictatorship of Cuba for the freedom of the United States, and now you are comparing what is happening here with what people have experienced and are experiencing back in the dictatorship. Why?
Oh, because I see a troubling similarity, a troubling connection, and that is an attack on the freedoms that sustain the greatness of the American university system. This is not just about Harvard. You know, the U.S. has what I would characterize as the leading university system in the world. And that system, really, the greatness of that system is based on a bedrock principle, and that principle is freedom. You cannot really have academic excellence without freedom. Freedoms that must be protected. And in my view, the number one task of the federal government on that front is to protect those freedoms. Now, the federal government is, of course, entitled to have concerns, to have issues, to raise questions. All that is normal. It happens all the time. It's processed. There are processes to handle those concerns. But the number one task doesn't change, and that is to protect the freedoms that have sustained the greatest university system in the world for the last, 80 years or so?
And this is an imposition of ideological oversight, not some sort of fiscal oversight, but this is saying that the administration of Harvard and the professors of Harvard and the students of Harvard have to act in line with the administration in order to enjoy continued funding. Is that the concern?
Well, I think the at least to me the main issue was when I read the letter that the administration sent to the leadership at Harvard, was all these references to viewpoint diversity and the need to recalibrate the viewpoints of the existing faculty and students. And I was thinking, how do you do that? In order to do that, first of all, you need to establish the mix of existing viewpoints. Now, think about it, because that's what brought a deja vu to me. You know, I when I was a very young person, younger even than you, I was a junior scholar at the law school at the University of Havana. And, certain viewpoint purity was required to be part of the faculty at that university. And it gets ugly quickly, because in order to do that, you have to periodically purge people who do not conform to those viewpoints. You have to create a system of vigilance to somehow police people. Of course, faculty naturally in an environment like that, the first thing they do is to retreat away from controversial issues, is to basically follow the established line. And that is death to academic excellence. That is death to knowledge production. You cannot produce knowledge under those circumstances. You can produce slogans, even good slogans, even really well-done slogans, but you're not going to produce leading knowledge that way.
In addition, though, to kind of controlling and suppressing speech and thought, I'm concerned about knowledge and progress, because Harvard is a research university. And so part of what they are defunding, taking billions and billions of dollars away, some people might find the titles of these studies somewhat frivolous, but there is a significant amount of very important research, intellectually, scientifically. What is it, in addition to, of course, the economic impact to the university, the community, the state of Massachusetts, what is being sacrificed here by defunding research that theoretically helps everybody, not just Harvard and Harvard students and professors, but the entire country and the federal government in the world.
So I think you sacrifice the future, and I think you sacrifice the greatness of the American university system, not just Harvard. You know, there are many areas of basic research that the private sector cannot sustain for very basic reasons. You know, the private sector needs quick returns on their money. But some research, takes decades in order to produce the kind of breakthroughs that have sustained the economic prosperity of this country for the last almost 100 years. So you sacrifice that. That is what you sacrifice. You sacrifice the leadership of the American university system, which is a global leadership, and you sacrifice, therefore, a future that depends on innovation and scientific excellence.
We're in Miami. I'm from Florida, and so we've seen a lot of politicians hijack the generational trauma of the Cuban people to kind of create a revisionism of their own family's history. Ted Cruz did it. He just did it live on a podcast where he talked about, my father, I hate communists because my father was tortured in Cuba. Now, he was tortured by Batista, but that's it. I was like, wait, I'm sorry, rewind that? That was
record scratch.
Yeah, Batista's not the leftist guy. He's not the left-wing dictator. He's the right-wing dictator, right? So, and then, of course, Marco Rubio, who for a time, his bio had his family fleeing the revolution in 59, but in actuality, they also came over here in 1956 during the Batista regime. And now we have, at this moment in history, our first Cuban-American Secretary of State. And you saw in that news package, sends out a letter to embassies and consulates around the world saying we are no longer going to be interviewing potential foreign students. We are going to have a more rigorous oversight of their social media to see ideologically where they stand, so we don't let people who without the appropriate ideology or opinions come into our country. Now, I have to think this is not DEI. I think Harvard is bringing in the best of the best from around the world to study in this institution. So I guess how this sort of two-pronged there, how disappointing is it for you to see our first Cuban-American Secretary of State participating in what you have defined as America kind of devolving into the tyranny of Cuba in terms of academic freedom, and what of these foreign students that they are attempting to block to come study here?
You know, I have to say, I'm not going to comment on Secretary Rubio personally because I do not know him. And when he was appointed, I actually thought that was a good appointment, that he was a competent appointment. And I felt honored to have a fellow Cuban-American serve in that role. If I had a chance, I would tell Secretary Rubio something that I suspect he already knows, which is that the students who apply to come to study in the U.S. do so first and foremost because they believe in the promise of the U.S. and of the American university system. And central to that belief and central to that admiration is our respect for freedom of expression, which is at the very center of the greatness of this academic system. So it is possible, I suppose, that some of the students who arrive in the U.S. from all over the world, are not perfect in some kind of way. But overall, we are talking about the brightest of the bright from all over the planet coming here to bring their talents, to bring their potential to our universities. Guess what? Many of these young people stay and then contribute enormously to our prosperity.
Yeah, and Spain actually just approved expedited access to foreign students that have been barred from entering the U.S. for its universities because they acknowledge what the professor is saying. That
So it's a brain drain.
It's a brain drain.
Yeah.
These people are bringing in talents, into these countries, and other countries are taking advantage of the gaps we are building right now.
We
in
should
our own
want the
country.
best and brightest from all over the world. We always
Correct.
have. And that's a priority that's changing.
China would be delighted to keep those students who are now coming here. They would be delighted. They're probably applauding somewhere these things because they want to keep their brightest too. Of course they do. But when I was in Cuba, I heard many times about robo de cerebros, which is like stealing brains. You don't need to steal anything. You create the opportunities. The brains find their way. They find their way to greatness. They find their way to excellence. They find their ways to American universities. You don't have to steal anything. We should not lose that. That is just a pipeline of excellence, and it's fed from all over the world. Now, do you want a better deal than that? That's the best possible deal.
Professor Alejandro de la Fuente, thank you for joining us. We'll see you soon at Alligator Alcatraz.